So it seems that the government in Diddy's trial has made a devastating move to strike a juror from the panel. Let's talk about it. Hey, it's Goldie, and I'm back with another video. So the judge has decided to make a ruling on juror number 6 in the trial, and this is what took place. Judge, in the morning when we addressed this, I said based on the record, I was not sure an inquiry was needed. During the breaks, I looked at the transcript from the robing room and from voir dire. There is not evidence of bias. The juror, and when he says bias, he's saying that there's not evidence that the prosecution is being biased and requesting that this juror be struck. The judge says, the juror indicated he moved to New Jersey with his girlfriend. It may not be permanent, but has been for the past few weeks. That was initially. Then there was a long break to confer. When the judge returned, the court asked, and he said 4 to 5 days a week in New York City. The judge goes on to say in the robing room, he said the daughter lived in New Jersey. Then he said in the Bronx with his aunt. In the voir dire, he said he lived with his girlfriend who lives in New Jersey. These are all inconsistencies. There's more in the U.S. letter, which is not in the docket. The judge goes on to say, the court does not feel further inquiry is required. The reason we have alternate jurors is if questions arise. Where there's a question like this, removal of the juror is required. The juror will be dismissed. He should not return on Monday. Combs's attorney says, let me make a record. We didn't want an inquiry because it might have a chilling effect. It is very, very, very common to have a girlfriend in New Jersey or vice versa. He should have been allowed to explain. These jurors have been attentive. Combs's lawyer goes on to say, I'm concerned that the court is equating inconsistencies with lying or hiding something from the court. If you bring him out here, we can come to some sort of understanding. He has come here every day. I've been in this court 25 or 30 years. The lawyer goes on to say, there have been issues with representation of African American and Hispanic jurors in this district. We've taken a step with this jury. Now we're taking a step backward. Some say Black and Hispanic jurors don't answer the call. Well, he did. The judge says, anything from the government? The government says, I have nothing to add, Your Honor, to Your Honor's ruling. Mr. Donaldson is suggesting we make the decision here based on race. But the focus here is the integrity of the proceeding. The alternates have also been showing up on time. The judge says, in voir dire, he said, I live in the Bronx with my fiance and daughter. There is no reason to lie but to try to get on the jury. Then in the colloquy, he says he had just moved to New Jersey, adding that his daughter had been living in New Jersey. The judge goes on to say, he said, all my bills go to the Bronx. It's that he wanted to be on the jury. After the break, he says he actually spends more of his time in the Bronx, which is flatly inconsistent with what he had previously said. The juror is shading answers to stay on the jury. The judge continues, why this is the right thing. That's why this is the right thing to move to the alternate. Combs's attorney says, it is going to be a less diverse jury. That is a fact. Seeing that I have seen this in this district, it is paramount to get a representative jury, particularly in this city. The judge goes on to say, I've heard you, Mr. Donaldson. And Combs's attorney, Agnifilo, says, I've got a new argument. There was a state case that there's a difference between the principal jurors and the alternate jurors. I know I'm throwing the ball in the end zone with New York law, which is a Hail Mary. Another of Combs' attorneys still says they bring this up now after weeks of watching the jurors' reaction. Now they go back to voir dire. Everybody knew, but no one did anything. At the least, bring the juror in potentially to explain. The judge says that I will consider all of this. The judge goes on to say this came up in a colloquy this week in an organic way. If the defense knew it before, that's something else. I'm going to thank Mr. Donaldson and Mr. Agnifilo for the issues they raised. If there's a change in my thinking, I'll let you know. The prosecutor says, for the record, we had no idea doing voir dire. The judge says, all right, well, let me have the parties at the sidebar. And the jury was not there. So the judge returns and says, we have a sensitive matter to discuss. Everyone must leave and the courtroom will be sealed. So in my perspective, it seems as if the government, the prosecution, is really just picking this juror apart. Now they question his intellect, if he was able to read or write. They question now his location, if he lives within the district or not, and which will allow him to serve on the jury. And it just seems as if they really want to strike this juror. Now, from my perspective, this juror is one of the jurors. He's a black man. They've said that is one of the jurors that seemingly is aligning with Diddy and what has been presented thus far about Diddy. Now, they say that Diddy has been communicating with some of the jurors, shaking his head, trying to do nonverbal cues and things like that to kind of sway the jurors' opinions. And to be honest, I believe that. I believe that Diddy is dropping hints, and I believe that this juror in particular is one of the jurors that is picking up on those hints, and he may be influenced by what Diddy is doing, to be honest. Now, I was listening to Lauren Larosa, I think it was NBC, she was doing an interview, that Diddy said that he would forego his rights to appeal if this juror could stay on the jury.
The other issues. Now, Lauren, let me ask you this. A huge question now hangs over the court. The future of juror number 6 up in the air. The judge states there are some questions about the juror's candor and ability to follow directions. But before officially removing the juror, the judge will talk to him one more time. Here's what we know. Before he was juror number 6, the man was recognized as juror number 58. And we understand he's a 41-year-old man from the Bronx. He works at a correctional facility, listens to reggaeton and 90s hip-hop. Hobbies include sports and fantasy football. What's going on, Lauren, at this stage of the case? What's happening?
Well, at this stage, the judge wants him out. The judge feels like, he can't be trusted to answer certain things honestly because of the back and forth with him saying, okay, I live in the Bronx at one point, telling a juror staff that he had moved to Jersey with his daughter and his daughter's mother is what caused all what's happening. So I think, they're just trying to figure out if he can answer questions and follow instructions. And that's a fear. But Diddy's team is saying, hey, look, whoa. He is a black juror. It's going to be less diverse if we let him go. Please, we don't want this to happen. And there was even some rights waived today in court with Diddy waiving his right to be able to, after this all happens, say, hey, something's wrong here, I want to appeal if they let this juror stay.
Okay, more to come. I want to make sure that we talk to you about your observations of what actually happened during the case, and specifically Jane.
And that was significant to me because, I understand that the lawyers are doing their job to fight for the juror to stay, but for Diddy to say that he will forego his appeal rights in order for the jury to stay, it's kind of striking to me. I'm really interested in seeing how things play out this week with this juror. Now, we know that Judge Submaranian is supposed to rule on this in just a few minutes. We'll check it out and see, and I'll be back to report a little bit more later on. It has been a really wild ride on this trial. We have the drug mule coming up today to testify. The RICO that everyone is talking about, kind of, in my opinion, was sealed last week. But let's get more information going forward this week, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.